Bon, on va commencer tout de suite par poser quelques questions à Paul Verhoeven. Je résume simplement peut-être sa carrière au moins jusqu'à Peters. Il est né en 1938, il a fait des études, et notamment des études en France sous la direction d'un enseignant qui était Jean Collet. Il a eu le goût du cinéma, un enseignant lui a donné le goût du cinéma, puis il retourne aux Pays-Bas, et puis il fait des films documentaires, et puis il réalise un feuilleton télévisé qui s'appelle Floris, avant de réaliser son premier long métrage. Son deuxième long métrage, Turkish Delights, sorti en France sous le titre Turkish Delights, en tout cas en version anglaise, est un énorme succès. Il réalise ensuite 2 films, Katy Tipple et Soldier of Orange, et Peters est le film suivant. Et Peters sera l'avant-dernier film de la période néerlandaise de Paul Verhoeven. Et je propose qu'on commence un peu à parler du film, puisque vous venez de le voir et que vous l'avez en tête, et je pense qu'il vous a fortement impressionné. Et je voudrais immédiatement poser une question à Paul Verhoeven, c'est qu'est-ce qui vous a intéressé dans cette histoire? Pourquoi avoir eu cette envie de tourner Peters, cette histoire?
It was mostly a reaction to the film I made just before, which is Soldier of Orange, that was situated in the environment of the University of Leiden, and was dealing, the characters were all people that had some money. You could call it a little bit the aristocratic, rich level of Dutch, intellectual level of Dutch society, young society at that time. So all the characters in that movie were like that. And we had the feeling, my scriptwriter Gerard Soterman and me, we had the feeling that we wanted to do something after this, also show something else about of Dutch society, and that was Spetters, which deals really with blue collar. Also, there was at that time a theatre piece in London that my scriptwriter had seen, which was called "Whose Life Is It Anyway?" And which is about a man that is a younger man that is paralyzed, I think, from the neck, and who commits suicide. And I believe that Gerard, who had seen it, was also impressed by that, and somehow these two things together were the kernel of the movie. On top of that, Gerard was also very interested visually in motocross. So this was something really that we put together out of reality, I would say. If you look at the movies that were made before, like Turkish Delight, Katy Tipple, Soldier of Orange, they were all based on books. In fact, mostly biographies or autobiographies. This was really more based on what we had seen, what was happening in Holland, what was happening in smaller villages. So it's the more... Yeah, it's a more realistic film and not so, and not taken from a book. If you take a book, then you have already a very strong basic elements there. Oh, it's too long. I talk too long. Well, so, and we tried to put it together. That took much more time, you know, because as I said, when you have a novel or a biography, at least you have already something. And here we had nothing. So it was really step by step that we constructed the script. Took us about a year. On top of that, it was very difficult to get financing from the Dutch financial committees, because they felt that there's such a decadent view of Holland, so perverted, and that the main character, the girl, was really a slut, and so that I couldn't do anything like that, because I would basically hurt Dutch society. And so I had to rewrite the script, which I did, and then basically shot the original script. That didn't make me much friends there. La réaction du film, not so much the reaction for the audiences, of the public, but the reaction in general of the critics and the committees and everybody else that had something to say in Holland, was extremely negative. And for, I think the first, this was 81, I say, 81, 82 perhaps, and the first time that I read a semi-positive review on Spetters was about 16 years later. It was more during these years when they came back to the film, because of course they couldn't forget it, because... And then they would say about other movies, well, this is really not a great movie, at least it's better than Spetters. Yeah. And then, of course, there were groups that were standing in front of the theater with boards and saying that it was misogynistic, that there was anti-gay, that I was promoting all invalids to commit suicide, and des choses comme ça.
Quand on voit le film, on pense au cinéma de Fassbinder. C'est une chronique sociale traversée par où les personnages sont à la fois déréglés par les pulsions et en même temps c'est une société de classe très très dure. Est-ce que vous connaissiez le cinéma de Fassbinder? Est-ce que parce qu'il fait vraiment penser à Speters fait vraiment penser au film de Fassbinder. Le mélange de chronique sociale et de portrait des pulsions sexuelles de personnages qui dérèglent tout.
It's possible because I know Fassbinder. I don't know exactly when I saw his movies, and I was the one that I liked best was, in fact, television, which was Alexanderplatz. Mm-hmm. I thought it was fantastic and very impressive, and he died very young, in fact. Mm-hmm. I don't remember in what year he did Alexanderplatz, if there was before or after Spetters. I have no idea. It was not when I was doing that I was thinking about Fassbinder, but I had seen him, of course, you know, and like I have been influenced by Hitchcock, and notably by Vertigo and North by Northwest, and you can see that certainly in a certain way in Basic Instinct, and even in other movies, and even the movie I just did with Isabelle Huppert, I mean, there's influences of more, but that influences of Buñuel, but certainly also Hitchcock. Yeah. So the things you see and you use, they always stay with you, and you don't even know if you're inspired by that or not. But you find solutions that are sometimes really in the direction of what you have seen personally. I mean, in other movies.
Ce qui est formidable avec Spetter, c'est surtout le portrait de votre personnage féminin principal, c'est qu'on voit bien que vous êtes resté fidèle à vous-même, quelle que soit l'économie de votre cinéma. C'est-à-dire que le personnage féminin principal annonce déjà celui de Basic Instinct, celui de Showgirls, Elizabeth Berkley dans Showgirls, Sharon Stone dans Basic Instinct, c'est-à-dire une femme qui essaye d'avoir le pouvoir et le contrôle par le sexe, une sorte de prédatrice. Vous aimez beaucoup ce genre de personnage féminin, non?
I like women, yes.
Yeah. But special kind of women.
No, yeah, but of course you choose something that for a movie that is kind of different, isn't it? That is not too much into the norm. So I don't know. I'm married to a very strong woman. Perhaps that's a very simple explanation, and that might be the right one.
Il y a un cinéaste français qui a été aussi un très grand critique, et Jacques Rivette, qui aimait beaucoup vos films, et qui a décrit votre cinéma comme la description de personnages qui survivent dans un monde peuplé d'ordures. Et Spetters, on peut penser que ça peut coller avec Spetters.
Yes, I believe he wrote it in his when he wrote a review of Showgirls.
Yes.
Of course, Showgirls had the same problems as Spetters in Holland. Showgirls was a disaster in the United States and had all the same criticism that were against Spetters in Holland came back when I had done Showgirls. And I think for years, and the only positive review that I ever read was Jacques Rivette. Yeah. Yeah, I was very happy. Eh? But of course, a film like Soldier of Orange is really not dragging into the mud. Eh? It's a high level. Et Basic Instinct non plus. Il
n'y a pas de boue, mais il y a du sperme.
On ne voit pas là. Il y a d'autres choses à voir, mais j'ai oublié ça.
Dans Basic Instinct, il y a les lunettes qui voient le sperme on peut voir le sperme sur le lit.
I bet the sperm in my last movie.
Ok.
I mean, étant en France, on peut faire ça, je crois.
Ah oui. Alors, on dit que l'accueil un peu étriqué qui a été fait à Spetters, notamment aux Pays-Bas, vous a déterminé le fait que vous avez eu envie d'en sortir et d'aller faire une carrière ailleurs et à Hollywood.
Well, it was not really that I wanted that. I mean, in fact, I felt much more to stay in Holland with my group of people, group of actors and crew members, and I felt more in this way connected with Ingmar Bergman or Fellini than with American cinema. So it was more that it became so difficult in Holland to get money because of spatters that when after Soldier of Orange, there were always invitations from the United States and scripts that they started to send me to come over and make a movie there. And at a certain moment in '85, I would say my wife, decided that I should go to the United States. We have done it in a very simple way. It was because of RoboCop. And so we went there and we kept our house in Holland and we thought, okay, let's try. And if it's okay, then we'll stay. And if it's not okay, we go back. And then basically the film worked very well and I stayed. I mean, I'm still there vaguely. À peu près.
À peu près. Vaguely. On va peut-être demander à la salle de réagir un peu. Qui c'est qui veut commencer? Voilà.
Bonjour, je voulais savoir comment vous aviez fait pour faire confiance au studio de Phil Tippett pour réaliser les créatures en images de synthèse sur Starship Troopers. Qu'est-ce qui vous a décidé à lui faire confiance à ce moment-là?
Well, that was an interesting process, and we were very lucky. In fact, in the time that I started to work on the script with Ed Newmeyer, who had also written RoboCop, and the producer, John Davidson, also RoboCop. There was, let's say, the head of the studio at that time, which was TriStar, which is part of Sony, was led by Mike Medavoy. Mike Medavoy was also the person that basically had given me money for Flesh and Blood and for RoboCop. And now Mike Medavoy, that was at Orion, and that has disappeared by now, and he was now the head of TriStar. And he was the person basically that convinced me also to come to the United States. And what happened then, that during these 2 years about that we worked on the movie, there were 5 regimes. Mark Medavoy, Mark Platt, Mark Canton, and deux autres, oui. They were only there for 3-4 months. Because then there was again a change, and then 3-4 months later, again a change. So in fact, during these 2 years, nobody ever looked at the movie. And that's the reason that it was made, I think. Because when it was made and when they finally saw it, then of course they were astonished, but they were of course flabbergasted. Because here was a movie about heroes that ultimately turned out to be peut-être fascist. If you see the movie, you see that all the uniforms are based on a German design, isn't it? I mean, be it the black uniform as a uniform or of the other ones, it's all taken, in fact, from the Triumph of the Will. The movie, the documentary that Leni Riefenstahl made of the Nuremberg Party of Hitler in '34. I copied also many shots of that movie, and of course they felt what I had done, but it was that was too late. I mean, and of course the political message of the movie is subversive, you know. It says it is Buenos Aires, but it's about the United States, of course. Yeah. So I would say, in general, about the whole process, it was really. I was really very lucky that there was nobody there. Otherwise, I don't think this movie would ever have been made, and I think it will never be made anymore.
En fait, ça recouvre une question que je voulais vous poser justement puisqu'on parle de votre carrière à Hollywood. En France, vous avez finalement la réputation d'un cinéaste qui faisait des grands succès hollywoodiens, mais qui en même temps faisait autre chose en contrebande. Vous êtes un peu un contrebandier du cinéma hollywoodien. Vous faites des films qui ont une apparence de divertissement, et puis derrière, il y a quelque chose de plus profond, une satire politique et même peut-être une dimension métaphysique qui n'est pas forcément perceptible immédiatement. Et donc vous avez un peu répondu à la question que je voulais vous répondre sur Starship Troopers, mais ça peut-être que c'est valable pour d'autres. Est-ce que les producteurs hollywoodiens étaient bien conscients de ce que vous faisiez? Ou est-ce qu'il y a eu des malentendus?
Well, as long as the movies are successful in the United States, you get a free pass, isn't it? I mean, because the money reigns. I mean, you can buy the presidency nowadays, isn't it? With all these super PACs. I mean, the money dictates nearly the elections. So if you are successful, that will, and I mean successful, not critically, but successful at the box office, they will give you, you can do your next movie. And the problems start when that's not happening. So for Showgirls, that basically was financially, I would say, bad at that time. Later it changed, but at the moment that it came out, was it made only $20 million. And so then the problems really start. And then people get more critical. It's amazing that but it was Mike Medavoy, who had become a friend, that gave the green light to Starship Troopers, you know. But after Starship Troopers, it was even more difficult, because that worked okay, but not to the degree that, if you compare it to the price, the budget of the movie, which was about $100 million.
D'autres questions?
Bonjour. Dans Spatters, mais dans tous vos films, il y a une attention très portée au jeu d'acteur, et pourtant vos films sont ultra découpés, les plans sont très chorégraphiés. Comment vous arrivez à avoir cette confiance avec les acteurs pour se montrer nus, faire des scènes très très violentes comme ça, même dans vos films hollywoodiens?
Well, I mean, there are actors and actresses basically where you don't have to cut at all. I mean, I just worked with one, which was Isabelle Huppert. That's you can. With Isabelle Huppert, I would let the shot go, although it was already the next scene, but she would continue, and at the end of her performance, I would realize that we had already done the next scene. So that exists. That is quelque chose de exceptional. But if the actors and actresses are not that good, you have to compose it out of the different takes. But for example, with Basic Instinct, we had to do enormous amount of takes with Sharon Stone. So if I did 20 takes with Sharon Stone, I could do 2 takes or 3 takes with Michael Douglas. In fact, the first take of Michael Douglas was perfect, the second and the third also. So, but with Sharon, there was a part of the take that was okay, but then she couldn't hold it or forgot it or whatever. And at the end, even to the point that Michael Douglas came to me and was angry that I gave him only 2 takes, 3 takes, and 20 to Sharon. But it was necessary with him. I said, Michael, we can do more takes, but it was already perfect. So with Sharon, that was not the case. And then, of course, it's very important that you have a very talented editor. I had Frank Curiosity, who did RoboCop, Total Recall, and Basic Instinct, and that can take the best part out of the 20 that you had. And I think that he did that in the most. I mean, you don't see it. You don't see it that for, let's say, 20 seconds I might have used 3 or 4 takes. You don't see it. It's so well edited that he made these. I mean, if you look at Casino, basically Martin Scorsese's movie, then you can see that he made also many takes, but they were so different that you can see that if you see the performance, that it's uneven. Sharon's performance. I mean, I was very lucky to have somebody, an editor that did a great job, because it was, you could not use one take. It was impossible. But nobody notices. I think ultimately, if you look at the movie, everybody talks about Sharon, nobody about Michael. I know that has to do with other things, perhaps, but.
J'aimerais savoir si vous revoyez souvent vos propres films et si vous avez vu les suites que d'autres ont réalisées. Est-ce que vous en pensez? Je ne sais pas si vous savez qu'il y a une suite à Showgirls aussi.
Yes, I got, and the remakes too. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I went to see that just to see how they would handle that, and it was interesting to see the remake of Total Recall, the remake of RoboCop, and I saw RoboCop 2 and 3 and whatever. Starship Troopers 2 and 3, which was made more for direct to video, in fact. Yeah, I studied that, and perhaps to feel superior.
Mais c'est un point de vue intéressant. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'aujourd'hui Hollywood, puisque ces films ont été faits après les vôtres, est-ce que vous pensez qu'aujourd'hui Hollywood pourrait accepter les projets comme ceux que vous avez proposés à Hollywood dans les années 80, 90 plutôt Est-ce qu'il serait possible de faire les films que vous avez faits à Hollywood aujourd'hui, à votre avis?
Ah oui, oui. Il faut dire que the films were never instigated by me. They were given to me.
Right.
I mean, in Holland, and I did everything came from me and my scriptwriter. In the United States, the scripts came always from others. So that's already essential difference. What was the other question, the second part?
Mais est-ce qu'on pourrait faire aujourd'hui, parce que quand on voit,
well, apparently, I mean, the style that I used for these movies, especially RoboCop and Starship Troopers and even Showgirls, which has some irony and some not taking it completely seriously, accepting that what's happening, or in Total Recall, or in Starship Troopers, or RoboCop, that somehow it's also comic bookish. I think that is at this moment it should be, or vraiment really science fiction comic book, or it should be serious, you know. And if you look at Total Recall, they really went for completely serious, and the same for RoboCop. There was no lightness, there was no wink. It was all taken very seriously, and I think, of course, what is happening in both these two movies. It's a bit ridiculous. It's not true, of course. Cannot be true. So if you take it so seriously, it becomes kind of boring to me. And I think that was the result, I think, notably of Total Recall, and to a certain degree, let's say, to RoboCop. I mean, with that kind of scripts, it seems not to work so well. Because, I mean, to say to somebody, Total Recall, every halfway the movie it is, isn't it? When there's a doctor coming in and saying to Arnold Schwarzenegger, everything basically what you think you just, what happened to you the hour before, also saying that to the audience, you know, everything you saw for now is nonsense. and that was the scene that was in the script. Now, if it is that style, then where you would say that you are, which is weird, of course. I mean, they wouldn't try to do that. If you make that too serious, then I think it becomes unbelievable. You have to protect yourself by a certain distance, I think.
Moi, ça me donne envie de poser cette question parce que quand on voit les films de votre période néerlandaise et puis les films hollywoodiens, on voit bien que c'est quand même le même cinéaste qui a fait Robocop et Speters ou Total Recall et Soldier of Orange. Il y a vraiment quelque chose de commun, profondément commun et unique, dans une identité entre tous ces films. Est-ce que vous aviez le loisir quand même de modifier, de travailler les scénarios qu'on vous proposait à Hollywood? Vous aviez la possibilité, la liberté de travailler sur les scripts, sur les scénarios.
Well, sure I had, but these scripts are already done in such a, let's say, strong way, and they are so precise, and this very, if you start to change something, everything falls apart. So you cannot do so much. If you work free, like with Spetters, or when we did Soldier of Orange, where you have a novel, but you take certain elements out of the novel, you have much more freedom than when you get an American script in general. Mm-hmm. I feel it very difficult. I mean, I've been working with Ed Neumeyer on RoboCop and Starship Troopers, but that is a unique. Ed Neumeyer, when we were doing RoboCop and Starship Troopers, was always with me all the time. He was always with me at the set. Mm. So I could continuously discuss things and whatever, change things. But in general, of course, you don't have that luxury. But he wanted it. He wanted to be, also he wanted to do his own movies, but he wanted to see how I did it. And so he was there, and I gave him all kinds of things to do. But I had the luxury to be surrounded by two people at Numa and John Davison, the producer, that would be at my side all the time. So then you can change things. But in many cases, that's not the case now.
Oui. Je voulais vous demander, à la fin des années 90 ou plutôt au début des années 2000, quand la mode des fresques historiques a regagné Hollywood après le succès de Gladiator, est-ce que vous avez songé ou non à réactiver votre projet Crusades Et dans quelle mesure, plus tard, il s'est rapproché, enfin, ça s'est rapproché ou non de Kingdom of Heaven de Ridley Scott.
Well, the script of The Crusades is in the hands of Arnold Schwarzenegger. When we were working on the movie, and we were already building, in fact, the walls of Jerusalem in Morocco, it turned out that the company that I was working with, Carolco, couldn't afford it. There was not enough money, and we broke it off. And Arnold, we had a pay-or-play contract. So Mario Casar, head of the company, owned him whatever, $12 million or something, which they hadn't either. And so they paid Arnold some money and they gave him the script. So the only person that can revive the Crusade is Arnold. The film, Ridley Scott's film about the Crusades, I saw that, and again, basically, if you compare it to the script we had that was written by Waylon Green, our script was written by a well-known American writer, Waylon Green, who also wrote, for example, The Wild Bunch. And so it had a certain lightness. Also, you can see that in The Wild Bunch. And you had really to laugh. It was not a very hard, not continuously a harsh movie. It was like RoboCop. There were moments that you could basically relax. And so, and Kingdom of Heaven, of course, is straight on without any smile. So I think. I think it still would be an interesting experiment to do the Crusades, but I have no power to make it work. For example, the end of the movie Crusades is after he has done the Crusades and people want him to make the king, Arnold, the king of Jerusalem, what was Gottfried von Bouillon, bien sûr. And then he doesn't do that. He says, no, I found a woman and I go to, and in fact the ending was really cultiver son jardin. That's not heroic, yeah? But that was the end of the movie, really. It was really Voltaire, was bomb. That's my statement.
Moi, j'aurais voulu savoir si vous aviez réalisé tous les films que vous aviez vraiment envie de réaliser, ou s'il y en avait un dont vous aviez eu l'idée plus jeune que vous n'avez pas pu faire, et si oui, de quoi parlait-il? Et j'aimerais aussi savoir, entre la Hollande, la France et les États-Unis, où est-ce que vous avez préféré tourner et pourquoi?
To answer the last question, of course, the difference is money. There's more money in France than in Holland, and there is more money in the United States than in France. So that's, I think it's really what arranges everything and it puts everything in position. Also, it is America is more what you would call a capitalist country, and you could, I think, say that France and Holland are socialist. So I think that's all has a lot to do with money, but of course these are the most important differences. If you go to the set, if you are in France or in Holland or in the United States and you start shooting, it's all the same. I mean, the language changes, but the way you look, the way everybody, your DP has the same outfit and the same kind of ideas than my DP in Holland or my DP in the United States. So there is no difference there. It's just basically the big differences has to do with the amount of money you can spend. And of course there were movies that I really, when I was young, I wanted to make a movie about Alexander the Great, but Oliver Stone did that already. And I wanted to make a movie about Jesus. I might still do that. A certain kind of Jesus, bien sûr. When you would do Alexander the Great, it's clear that you need American money, because that would be $150 to $200 million or something like that. But a movie about Jesus might perhaps difficult in Holland, but I think is possible in France. So.
Ça m'amène à une question que je vais vous poser, c'est qui est quand même l'importance de la religion dans vos films comme un un appareillage de métaphores et de symboles et toute une imagerie visuelle que vous utilisez dans vos films, même quand apparemment il ne s'agit pas de récits religieux. Je pense à Robocop par exemple, qui est le récit d'une résurrection finalement, et que vous faites marcher sur les eaux, comme vous l'avez dit l'autre soir à la fin du film. Et donc, et peut-être aussi cette idée que ce qui rattache votre cinéma à la religion, c'est l'idée de l'incarnation. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut que le cinéma nous donne à voir des corps pour la réalité des corps. Et c'est pour ça d'ailleurs qu'ils sont parfois un peu scatologiques, vos films.
Yeah, ciao, see. But I would say religion in general is, for many people and over the whole world, it can be more important than sex, huh? I mean, so religion is so. I mean, perhaps 20 years ago we thought that the religion would be out of the window. I mean, but absolutely not. The extreme interpretations of religion are common at this moment, anywhere. So I think it's only natural that religion. I mean, no, I don't have to be a religion. I don't have to be a woman to portray a woman. I don't have to be religious, basically, to accept a religion as part of our society, as part of our thinking, and that we are basically influenced by that, and that it plays a part. And so it's natural that the three elements basically that are dominant, I think, anywhere on earth are sex, are violence, and religion. So I think it's normal, I would say. You could perhaps ask, why is nobody using it? So why is nobody using it?
Bonjour, je voulais savoir quand vous avez commencé à recevoir des scripts de Hollywood avant d'y partir et une fois que vous y êtes parti, qu'est-ce qui a décidé vos décisions de script? Est-ce que vous avez eu des évidences dans les choix de vos films ou est-ce que vous avez hésité entre plusieurs projets? Quel était un peu votre process dans le choix des films que vous alliez faire aux États-Unis?
Well, Robocop basically was, of course, the first American movie I did, and that was the big decision. After that, going there, then I mean, if it would have been, let's say, a disaster, I would have been back in Holland, clearly. But I mean, the decision basically was really going to Hollywood and do Robocop. There were other scripts, but nothing that I really liked. And a Robocop I didn't like either. So, as I have said, explained in the beginning of this week. But it was really my wife basically that asked me and forced me to read it much more precisely, and then it took me a week or something to decide that it was that I could make that movie, that there were elements in that movie that I liked, and that was enough to do it. So I didn't compare it to other projects because everything that I got, I don't even remember. So Robocop was standing out, but I didn't realize it in the beginning. And after that, of course, the moment I had done Robocop, Mario Casar came and Arnold Schwarzenegger came to me and offered me Total Recall. And then after Total Recall, Mario offered me a Basic Instinct. So it was not that I was looking all the time. It went from one to the other, in fact. It was really like it was prearranged, you know. I mean, but it was not, of course. But, so there were not at moments really, shall I do this or shall I do that? No.
Je me demandais, par rapport à Jésus, comme... c'est important pour vous, dans votre travail, dans votre écriture, dans votre recherche, comment la présence de Jésus est arrivée dans Robocop?
It was the reason to make Robocop, in fact. I mean, because when I disliked the script, I had not realized that for me, and apparently for my wife Martine, more than I in the beginning, that of course she knew about my interest in the historical Jesus. And when I started to read it more precisely, I realized that it was about resurrection. In fact, crucifixion and resurrection and lost paradise. Lost paradise is family, crucifixion crucifixion when he gets shot to death in it in the most cruel way, and resurrection when he comes out and is reprogrammed as a robot. So these three elements really. That was the reason that I wanted to do RoboCop. Not so much the action stuff and all that stuff. That basically I took that. Okay, I have to do that too. But it was really, I mean, and especially the moment that he goes to his house, because RoboCop has discovered who he was before. He goes to that house where he lived before, and then he gets these flashes about his family and his son, his wife, and his son. And for me, that was really talking and showing what the lost paradise is. I mean, of course, it's a mythological concept, but it has a great beauty. And so that was the reason I did it.
The question is, after seeing this film, I ask how you transformed yourself from the European film director that make European movies that end disastrous to the Hollywood film director that make Hollywood movie that have mandatory happy end. Is the producer help you, or you just yourself transform it, make such transformation?
That was in the script, huh? It's not that I basically had any influence on that. I mean, if they would have given me basically something that would be end in a negative way, I would have done that. I mean, I'm not afraid of what happy end is fine, and not happy end is also. If the story leads to that or that is basically the culture that gives that. The culture is represented in the script. So if you are not part of the script making process, it comes to you and you can say yes or no. But I didn't have to make any effort, you know. No, I mean that was basic. I mean, Vertigo, for example, one of my favorite movies, is a tragedy. I mean, they make tragedies, and they made. Not much anymore now. Now, of course, everybody survives. But at that time and during the film noir, when you see movies like Sunset Boulevard or whatever, this classical movie, of course there is negativity. The guy dies. You know, the whole story of Sunset Boulevard is from the point of view of the dead man, like is the Stalag 7 or whatever. So, I mean, there was a time in the United States that basically dark endings were normal and were loved. I mean, that's not the case at the moment, you know, but, and you have to be a politician or perhaps a sociologist to know exactly why this is happening in the United States. I mean, I don't know. The only thing you can see that is since that time, the United States has become completely imperialist. So perhaps you have to find it there, psychologically.
Une dernière question. Voilà. Oui.
Bonjour Paul, bonjour à tous. Moi, ce qui m'a frappé en revoyant Peters, enfin plutôt en le voyant, parce que j'avais vu une version censurée, donc là j'ai pu voir la version intégrale, merci pour ça, c'est la très grande liberté de ton, et notamment le naturel avec lequel vous amenez des scènes d'intimité avec des plans très graphiques. Et sur d'autres scènes, on a même des scènes de viol. On aborde le problème du handicap, le problème de l'homosexualité, voilà. Mais toujours avec un très grand naturel, une très grande simplicité, et on se rend compte que c'est la narration qui amène ça. Et je voulais savoir si vous n'avez pas rencontré justement un problème avec cette liberté de ton en arrivant à Hollywood. Et j'irai même plus loin. Enfin, moi, j'analyse un peu l'échec de Showgirls à cause de ça, c'est-à-dire que les gens ont retenu que le côté graphique sans prendre en compte la narration, parce qu'il y a quand même toute une satire sur Hollywood avec cette jeune fille opportuniste qui arrive pleine de rêves et qui se rend compte qu'il faut se prostituer en gros dans ce monde-là pour réussir. Et voilà, je voulais savoir si vous l'avez ressenti comme ça en arrivant à Hollywood. Est-ce que ça a mis à mal votre liberté de ton?
Well, yeah, of course, in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, basically, there's a rating system in it. So that's called the MPA. That is basically deciding if your movie is R-rated, which is okay. PG-13, that is also better. I mean, or NC-17, that's not good. Or formerly it was X, that was pornographic. And so the studios, of course, prefer to make PG or PG-13 so that everybody can see it, but the R is already nearly gone. There are very few movies that are R-rated nowadays, and NC-17 doesn't exist anymore. I mean, there's nobody that dares to make an NC-17 movie. So there is, the studios basically, you sign a contract with the studio, you sign off on the fact that it should be an R. All my movies are R-rated. Because not so much because of the violence, but because of the sexuality. Sex is very, very dangerous in the United States. They think. And so, yes, of course, that inhibits you to do certain things. I mean, you can do them, but then ultimately you have to cut them out. I mean, there is really, if you look at the version of Basic Instinct that you have seen in France and in the United States, you would see that the scenes in the United States are shorter cut. There are moments, specific close-ups and stuff that are eliminated. Which, I mean, in France or in Holland, you have seen the original director's cut. In the United States, I did it myself because I was forced. I had signed on that would be an R, so they could force me to make it to an R. So I had to cut it and cut it and cut it till I got an R. It's very amazing that the shot of Sharon Stone with her legs open, that it passed. I mean, it's amazing. I think basically there is some politics there that they thought, okay, we cut all the rest, but we give them that. Yes, I think so. And I think basically the head of Jack Valenti was the head of the commission at that time, but basically he's the godfather of Michael Douglas. So I got that, but of course, working in Holland, I could do whatever I wanted. It doesn't exist, and basically I just did L. Basically, could do what I wanted here. So I think, of course, you have to see the French version or whatever. Yeah, the American version is later on DVD and stuff. They also, and that's different. The system is different. They also released the original version, but it was a couple of years later. Yeah, but there's a problem. Showgirls, for example, was NC-17. From the beginning, when I got the script of Joe Esterhaus, who had also written Basic Instinct, I realized that it would be impossible to make that movie like an R. And so I said, okay, I'll do it on the condition that we accept an NC-17. And so the movie was released, the last movie that was ever released as an NC-17. I mean, there was Henry and June was before that, by Philip Kaufman, a year or two before, and Showgirls was the second one, and after that, of course, nobody dared anymore, nobody, the studios don't want it, because it reduces their capital, isn't it, that they get out of the movie, because there's fewer people that can see it. NC-17, nobody under 17 can see it. R, if you're 3 years old, you go with your father, you can get in. So, no problem. But, so the studios really hate NC-17, and basically we're all very happy that the film tanked.
Il nous reste à remercier Paul Verhoeven.
Merci.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci.
Et
thank you very much.
Et
thank you very much. Thank you. À la prochaine fois, hein, en France. Oui, thank you.